All right, guys, so we have some new findings here from Americans for Tax Fairness. They say, breaking, uncovered IRS tax records of 26 U.S. billionaires show they paid an average tax rate of just 4.8% from 2013 to 2018. An average tax rate for billionaires of 4.8%, despite collectively gaining $500 billion in wealth. Now understand, this doesn't include the COVID pandemic era, where they actually made trillions. They gained trillions in wealth. Okay, so just to give you an example of some of the people in here, Warren Buffett paid an effective federal tax rate of just 0.1%. Jeff Bezos paid 1.1%. Zuckerberg, 1.1%. Koch, 1.3%. Bloomberg, 1.8%. And Elon Musk, 2.1%. So billionaires are paying a super duper low tax rate. Now, let me explain to you why that is. Well, first of all, I'll show you the chart here so you can see. There are a handful, and I stress a handful, of billionaires who are actually paying what not just is in the letter of the law, but also the spirit of the law. There's like a handful. So Ken Griffin paid 38.7%. You have Israel Englander paid 45.4%. Now, my guess is with those characters, they are sticklers for following the rules. And so they don't want to be audited, and they say, you know what, whatever on paper I'm supposed to pay, and in the spirit of what I'm supposed to pay, I will pay all of it. But there's only like, 2 or 3 of them in here? The rest of these people are doing very weaselly tax avoidance schemes, which some of them are legal on paper, but, it's gross. So again, I'll explain it to you in a second here, but like even this guy or girl, Jan Koum, I don't know who that is, but 26.4%. In order to get down to that when you're a billionaire, you're doing some tricky stuff. Never mind the people who are paying like 0.1% or 3.4% or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, one of the tricks that these guys use is, so when you go to work, you make a salary or you're paid hourly. So you have what's called an income, and then you get taxed on that income. And we'll get to what those rates are in a second, okay? These guys, a lot of it is just wealth creation. So they're not taking an income. They have a company, they generate a lot of wealth, a lot of revenue, but they oftentimes leave that wealth or that revenue in the company. And what they do is they don't take any salary, or they take a small salary. Some of them even take $1, and then they go to a bank and borrow against the company. So what that means is they're living on borrowed money from the bank, and they're not taking an income, and that allows them to skirt virtually all federal taxes. And not to mention, these people have a team of experts and lawyers and accountants who know how to game the system, and many of them are gaming the system, again, legally, in a way that's gross, in a way that shouldn't be legal, but in a way that is legal. So that's how you get a situation where they pay just 4.8%, and they're billionaires, as they gain $500 billion in wealth. So, I mean, these numbers are absurd when you look at what these people are paying. Now, I want to compare this to what goes on with working class people, okay? So I'll give you an example here. This is on Wikipedia. This is the effective federal tax rates. This is for, working people who earn an income or a salary for a living. And this is for the year 2010, but it still gives you a good understanding. The numbers are roughly similar today. I think at the higher bracket, it's a little bit higher today, but this is roughly the same, okay? So look over here. So for the lowest quintile, so like the poorest people in the country who make $24,100 or less, okay, the effective federal tax rate they pay is 1.5%. Now I want you to stop and think about something here. Some of the poorest people in the country are paying more than certain billionaires. They're paying more than Buffett and Bezos and Zuckerberg. And what, the same as Charles Koch, right? Or no, even they're paying a little less than Charles Koch as a percentage. So, right off the bat, that is fucking crazy. If you make $44,200 a year or less, you pay an effective federal tax rate of 7.2%. That's more than what looks like most of these billionaires. If you make $65,400 or less, you pay 11.5% as an effective federal tax rate. I mean, how many of these billionaires are paying less than 11.5%? The overwhelming majority of them or excuse me, how many of them are paying more than 11.5%? The majority of them are paying less. This is crazy. Again, the average is 4.8%. And then if you make $95,500 or less, so now we're getting into upper middle class zone, you pay effectively 15.6% to the government, to the federal government. And then if you make $239,100, you pay 24%. So understand, again, the difference is these are people who work for a living, who earn a salary, who make an income, right? And that's what you're paying on it. You're paying a lot more. If you work for a living, you pay more than if you're an owner of a company or a CEO of a company and you generate wealth and you don't take an income, you just borrow against it, which is a giant loophole, and you pay like no federal taxes. The system is geared towards letting the wealthy run out the back door with all the money. So, I mean, it's crazy. And then here, one more example I'll give you guys, and we've talked about this before on the show, is the way the capital gains tax works versus the income tax. So you might work for a living and make like, let's say, $65,000 a year for your family of 3 or 4, right? And you could pay a higher tax rate than somebody like Mitt Romney who invests for a living. And Mitt Romney only had to pay like 15% in taxes on about $30 million made. Why? What's the difference? If you're paying 20% or 25% and you only make $65,000 a year, and he's paying 15% and he made $30 million a year, why is that? Well, because he made his money through gambling in the stock market. That gambling is taxed at the capital gains rate, which is a lower rate than working people. The incentive structure is exactly backwards. If we want to incentivize people to work, working people should be taxed less, and people who are gambling for a living should be taxed more. Now, of course, that might disincentivize a little bit of gambling in the system. I'm totally fine with that. I understand you need capital investment in a capitalist system. I get that. But if you tax them a little bit more, or at least you make it equal to what the income tax rate is, I think that would be more fair. I think that'd be more just. Again, if anything, I think there's a better argument for taxing people who invest for a living more than you tax working people. Because we're shaking down working people and shifting the tax burden onto them. So anyway, look, this is a wonderful report from Americans for Tax Fairness. It really unmasks how backwards the system is, how the wealthy have 1,000,001 ways to get away with legally paying nothing or next to nothing in taxes, and how working people get screwed when you look at the specifics, how you guys end up paying more. It's total bullshit. We need deep reform on it. And look, I will give credit in this sense to Biden. One of the best provisions, if not the best provision, of the Inflation Reduction Act is a corporate minimum tax rate of 15%, which is huge, guys, because there's so many corporations that literally pay zero in taxes. Some of them even get what's called a negative tax, which is like they get a net subsidy at the end of the year. This bill ends that, and it says you pay minimum 15% if you're a corporation. That's wonderful, and that's going to raise billions of dollars, probably hundreds of billions of dollars. So that's one good provision coming out of there. The next thing you have to do is change the tax system to crack down on all these loopholes and go after these billionaires, because without a doubt, they're not paying their fair share. People like Ben Shapiro will effectively lie about this and say, well, the rich end up paying most of the money as a raw number. But that's incredibly misleading, because if you're talking about as a raw number, you have to look at it as a percentage. So yeah, Bezos paying 1.1% of his wealth in taxes, that's going to be a pretty big number because he's super duper fucking wealthy. That's going to be a lot more than somebody who makes, $50,000 a year paying whatever it is, 10% or 15%, right? But that person's still paying a higher percentage, and they can't afford to pay that higher percentage versus Bezos, who can afford to pay a higher percentage. So there's this old saying, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. You could always, if you look closely, you can always see where the fuckery is when people on the right mess with these numbers and when they try to portray something that is not the reality. But anyway, this is an incredible report. Now we have to change the system to raise taxes on billionaires and to lower taxes on working people, and that's the path forward.